Hello everyone, welcome back to another tetraphobia vlog. My action roguelite game set in a world of floating islands that I just released into early access. This week I've been working on my first major content patch for tetraphobia during early access. This includes adding an entire new region to the game, with its own unique style, enemies and bosses. There's a lot of steps involved with creating a new region. I need to make new islands, new enemies, and new idols that represent this region. The early access build of tetraphobia already contains two regions. The Vitality region, full of plant creatures, where they harvest life essence to empower their abilities. And the War region, where strong enemies are constantly battling for survival. Now let's add the Greed region, which controls everything wealth and trade related. When I start a new region, the first thing I like to do is define what the idol of that region is going to look like. For Vitality, it's this beating heart tree. And for War, it's this samurai armor. These idols are worshipped by the creatures that call this place home, so it's important the idol really embodies the feeling of the regions. For Greed, I decided to use this weight scale, with gold on one side and materials on the other, truly embodying the idea of wealth and trade. I decided to animate the arm so it had a little bit of sway in it to make this idol feel a little bit more interactive when you see it on the islands. This was a fairly simple change, it just required separating the arm mesh from the main mesh of the scale, and then just adding a few extra materials on each side of the scale to represent the wealth. Let's take a look how this looks like on an island. With the idol defined, let's move on to creating some new islands for this Greed region. I already have a bunch of island meshes pre-generated, and I worked my way through them, finding the more interesting shapes that I like that I think would serve as good baselines for interesting gameplay. Once I found a shape that I like, it's time to generate the colour scheme that matches this new region. For Greed, I'm really looking for a yellowy orange hue to the islands. I do this a whole bunch of times until I have 10 rough templates for the islands that I want to make. Let's pick one of these and start working on the level design. I usually start off with a bunch of basic sketches on a notepad of the overall shapes that I'm going for and the objects that I'm going to add on these islands to provide interesting gameplay. With this island, I wanted to explore the idea of using these marble pillars as a way to create bridges across the islands. With all the obstacles placed, I now add some final touches of rocks, grass, and then a bit of differentiation of the colour on the island to create some paths. One island down, 9 to go. Whilst working on a few of the islands, I was really struggling to find objects that kind of made sense and fit this greed trade idea. I started exploring this idea of using these trade carts full of rare resources that could be used to create some variation on the islands. I started by creating a rough template of different types of rare resources that I'd like to fill these carts with. This featured exotic spices, gold bars, treasure, and then some gold ore as well. Once I'd created all of these variations of resources, I wrote a script that would randomly select one of these variations every time the carts are generated. This helps create a lot of variety on the islands, because even if you generate the same island multiple times, the contents of the cart is going to change, which just helps add a bit of variety into the visuals of the islands. Another thing I really like to do when generating islands is kind of design some of the islands as if they were once a whole piece of earth that constructed one clear area. Since the final layout of the islands is procedurally generated, there's a pretty low chance that these will ever be connected to each other, but on the rare chance that it actually happens, it creates this really nice effect, where you really get a sense of this idea that all of these islands used to be joined together and they were separated apart. For the next island, I wanted to go for some nice big open areas that had a central path through it, maybe once representing a trade route. With a bunch of island templates now created, we can get an idea of what the kind of generated layouts are going to look like for this region. I was really happy with how all this turned out. The color palette's really nice, and you get a real idea of the wealth and the trade that really embodies this region. In the next vlog, I'll be taking a look at the enemies that are going to call this place home. Make sure you like and subscribe so you get a notification for when that video goes live. I'll catch you in the next one.